Hi guys, it's Carl Melvin here. So a large part of my job over the last few years is helping people who are heavily entangled in a toxic family. And an aspect of this situation or this problem is family estrangement. And what that basically means is when one or more people within the family consciously decide to create space between each other. Now, the reasons why they create that space, it varies massively. It could be obviously conflict, it could be a common one within the family, lots of stress. It could be mixed match of expectations. I see it quite often with my clients, sometimes maybe double standards. What's expected of one sibling or maybe what's expected of the parents isn't expected of other people across the family. It could be a mixed match of beliefs. But I suppose probably one of the more common reasons is abuse in whatever form that abuse might take. And as a result, there's a desire to create distance from the people who are causing all these problems. Now, there are generally two basic types of estrangement. Most people think that estrangement is that I don't see these people anymore, I'm not in the same room as them, or I never speak to them, and that's called physical estrangement. But there's also an emotional estrangement as well, and what that means is that you may actually still see the estranged person on a daily basis for whatever reason. Maybe you both are pretending that things are okay, and I see this often with my clients when they meet up for birthdays or whatever other event. There's a facade of friendliness and there's a facade that things are okay, but covertly there is a problem that goes unspoken, and we would call that pseudo mutuality, when both parties or multiple parties, they're pretending that things are okay but really they're not. Also as well, because of the nature or the dynamic of family, maybe people are forced to be in the same room at the same time. If somebody gets sick, maybe there's another issue, maybe a parent isn't well at the moment, and as a result the siblings have to see each other on a daily basis. There's all these different reasons why people who are estranged are forced to be in the same room together. Now, it's October the 14th today, which is way too early to be talking about Christmas. I don't even like even thinking about Christmas now. It's way too early. But people who are dealing with family estrangement or who are dealing with toxic families, I found with my clients, with others, that it's starting to play in their mind. What am I going to do about Christmas? Am I going to visit? Do I want to visit? What will happen when I visit? Now, for some clients, their whole family situation has consumed their lives. It isn't just October, it's all year round. They constantly ruminate it, they're thinking about it, they're very uncertain about what to do, and that's a byproduct of certain aspects within the family. I see that particularly when my clients have suffered abuse within the family. It obviously leaves a trauma, and a byproduct of that trauma is a deep sense of uncertainty. But again, some clients, I see them start coming back in around October because they're not sure what to do. So it's important to understand the pressures that they experience. You know, Christmas is not like any other event. There's often a heightened sense of expectation or pressure to go and visit. Now, that pressure could be external, it could be internal. It could be externally from other siblings who you're not estranged from, parents who you're not estranged from, it could be from friends, it could be external family members, aunties or uncles who are aware of the situation. They may be saying to you, would you not go up and visit for Christmas? And they may not understand the full picture of the problem, what has happened in the family, but nonetheless they have an opinion. It could also be from a partner, it could be from other people in life, friends who don't quite understand why you're estranged, they don't understand why you're not going to visit. So that could be this, they put this pressure on you, you really should go and visit at Christmas. But often the pressure is internal, and I found with a lot of my clients is this kind of ambiguous push and pull, whereas they're kind of pull or push to visit again. That what drives that could be nostalgia, happy memories from the past. Maybe you've had good Christmases in the past, you'd like to recreate that. It could be from the desire for closeness, the desire with connection with people. It could be from the sense of loss that, it is a massive loss, estrangement, because people don't always recover. The relationship isn't always recovered from that, and they have to go through a grieving process, and it's a very complex dynamic, that type of grieving, because the person's still alive, but we don't have that relationship together. And it's like two opposing forces, because then you pull back from that, you're being pushed forward, but then you're pulling back from the reality of the relationship, memories around the mistreatment, the different reasons why you basically became estranged in the first place. And it is opposing forces, and it causes great anxiety inside of my clients, because they become quite stuck. They're not really sure. They're pulled one way, they're pulled another way, and they're just left in a very uncertain place, full of doubt, full of stress. It's a very difficult time, and the next few weeks can be very difficult for people trying to decide what to do on the lead up to Christmas. So that's what this video is about. But I'm going to break it down into three parts. We're going to look at the build up to Christmas, what you might do over the next 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks. Then actual Christmas engagement. So if you decide to go and visit your family, here's some tips how you might manage that. And then the aftermath, because very often with my clients I find that they have decided to go and visit, then they come back and sometimes they feel worse because of the visit, and even if nothing has happened, just that sense of loss, knowing that there is that disconnect. Even though we visited, still things are not okay, and things may never be okay. Now other people feel great after they visit. It's a sense of relief. Thank God it's done, it's over, I don't have to think about it again. So tune into the video. I'm going to talk for a while. I hope you get something from it, and I'll have a talk to you at the end. Cheers. Okay guys, so the build up to Christmas, and I was talking earlier on about the two different types of pressures you might feel. It may be external, it may be internal. Just looking at the external pressures, and it may come from other people within the family, it could be from parents, siblings, aunties, uncles, it could be friends in your life, it could be your partner, it could be from anybody. And generally when my clients come in and they talk about this, I try to explore a little bit what's behind the person applying this pressure. So what's their agenda, what's their bias? And it's kind of understandable within the family. If you're not talking to a sibling and your other siblings are involved, there's gonna be that residual stress. Of course, it's gonna affect them. Maybe they're not comfortable with this, and maybe they're kind of pushing you to go back up and reconcile. Often, if it's from outside the family, it could be from friends or other people who don't have enough context to what's happening within your family. And often we look at relationships through the mirrors of our own family and our past relationships. And if somebody has had a good relationship with their parents or their siblings, they may not understand it, and they may also be really uncomfortable with the notion that you're not talking to your family. So maybe they're driven by their own stress or their own sense of unease about what's happening. They may push you to try and reconcile, and that is quite dangerous because they don't have full context. They're not fully aware of what has happened and what you may have experienced that has led to the estrangement. What's particularly difficult is if you've told them in great detail what has happened, especially if there's mistreatment, a lack of respect, really toxic behaviours. I've seen with people, sometimes they turn a blind eye to certain aspects of it because they're just not comfortable with it, and they focus on the other parts. No, don't mind that. You never forgive and forget and just move on. Not so easy when you have to deal with that and look at that day to day. And again, often the people who give advice or try to exert pressure, their intentions may be very good. They're just a little bit naive. They haven't experienced this before. They don't fully understand or fully comprehend the situation and the weight of the situation on you if you are the person who is estranged. It's not their fault. They're trying to do their best, but in reality, they're probably causing more stress in your life, and they're adding more weight to your head, but causing you to doubt yourself even more, just by pushing you to do something which doesn't necessarily feel right. Now, with pressure comes stress, and it isn't the normal healthy stress. It's an unhealthy stress. It's a chronic stress that you've probably carried all year. It's quite normal to try to want to ease that stress, and that may also drive you to go up and to visit, just maybe in an effort that if I go and visit, maybe it will ease your stress. It might not. And sometimes we have that carries that stress just that little bit longer to work on ourselves and work out what we need to do to get more autonomy from family and to resolve some of our own issues which keep forcing us to go back into family. It takes time to do that. But really, with my work with my clients, my number one goal is to help them develop a sense of autonomy and a sense of freedom so they can make up their own mind. They can decide what's best for them. But an aspect of autonomy is making that decision, deciding, I don't care what other people think. I know how I experience my family. I know the stresses that it causes me, and I know what's most appropriate for my well-being. That's my priority when I work with my clients, is the people it's their well-being and making sure that they're looking after themselves and making sure that they're self-caring each other. Okay, so now we look at the internal pressures to visit over Christmas and the build up to Christmas. And the first thing that really strikes me always is just a deep sense of loss that people may experience if they're estranged from their family member, and that yearning for a connection. And it's quite powerful, it's quite hurtful, and it would draw people back in. And it's quite normal as well. As humans, we crave connection, especially when there's personal history, when there's all these memories. And you will have good memories of your family as well. Even the most toxic of relationships have good times. And you're going to be pulled back into that because there's familiarity in the good times as well as the bad. And the loss of that can be quite profound and will drive people to go back and visit and maybe hope that things will change now. Nostalgia does play a factor in that as well. Memories, good times when there was fun, which happens in all families, good or bad. Times when there was closeness, times when there was validation, when people understood what you were going through because, again, they had all that personal history. Guilt is a huge factor that it compels people to go and visit when there's estrangement, when they really don't want to, especially when there's kids. Because, that sense of depriving kids of a present from their aunties or their uncles or their grandparents, or how the guilt of how it may affect them if they don't go and visit. It's huge, and again, it leaves people quite stuck. It's quite stressful again. I always admire my clients for having consideration for their kids, because often it's very easy to become self-consumed in their own hurt and not consider the external impact that it has on others within the immediate family. Fear is going to be a strong driver. Fear of consequences if we don't visit, and those consequences again could be within the family, maybe there'd be further conflict. The biggest fear I find with my clients tends to be judgment. How will family react to me not visiting? What will they say? What will they say to others? And what narrative will they spin to others within the family? And we call that the narrative power. If somebody has that ability to shape the story around their perceptions or their ideas or their own manipulations, and it doesn't mean it's grounded in truth. But another fear is the stigma around estrangement and telling others. And there is a huge stigma, and I've seen that with my clients. And I was lucky, I got to do a little bit of research this year around family estrangement, and several of the participants said the same thing, where they tried to explain to somebody that I'm estranged from my mother, my brother, and people don't get it, and they become quite judgmental. They maybe don't even realize that they're judging, but they can't, again, comprehend why. And that fear keeps people quite stuck, and they don't tell anybody then. They can't engage with support. They're afraid to tell anybody out of fear of being judged. It's quite normal, but it's also quite tragic, because we need support to be able to move past. There's certain pillars that people need to build into their life, and I work with my clients to help them transition through estrangement in a healthy way, where eventually they can reach some level of autonomy. And support is it's one of those pillars that you can't compromise on it. You need to have support through this time, and that's what the next section is going to be about. Guys, so now we're going to talk about building your team, which is your support network, which is incredibly important when you're dealing with any family situation, but specifically estrangement. The first things first, if you find that you're trying to get support off other people, but you're constantly trying to over-explain everything to them, you need to understand that not everyone is going to understand this situation. They've not felt it, they've never been in it, they've no context, and you're wasting your time. If people will either get this or they won't get it. If they don't get it, then don't waste too much more of your life trying to explain it to them. Leave them off and try and find others who will understand the situation. Another thing is, try to invite people who are constantly throwing hypothetical futures, hypothetical problems in your face. What happens in a year from now? What happens 10 years from now? When somebody gets sick, what are you going to do then? And they're no use, because they're not coming up with solutions. They're just throwing more problems and installing more fear in a mind that's already fearful and is already focused on problems. You're just creating more problems down the future. So I always try to get my clients to avoid those type of people. Now, if you have people in your life who seem to get it and they understand, often there's a presumption that they know what you need, what type of support that you need, and they don't, and you have to tell them. Some people need advice. They're still very uncertain, so the words and opinions of other people are useful, but often some people get too much advice, and the advice isn't good. So maybe you just need validation. Maybe you need someone to challenge your negative feelings. So if you're someone that's feeling a huge amount of guilt, just to have someone in your life to say to you, you don't need to feel guilt, you've done nothing wrong. Or if they're fearful, someone who just placates your fears and calms you, keeps you a bit grounded, and lets you know that you're a good person, you don't need to change, you've done nothing wrong, and there's no need to be fearful. But what other people sometimes need are really strong boundaries. So if you're in a place now where you find that you're talking about this so much, and some people, it's important to analyze and to reflect and to really understand the situation, but sometimes people go a little bit too far. Maybe you need someone in your life to say, now hang on, you've spoken about this enough. We'll talk about it tomorrow at 7 o'clock for half an hour, and then that's it. And that's important as well, because we have to learn to park the situation. We can't let it consume us. We can't let it take over our lives completely. We have to know that it's time to think about it, and then it's time to move on with the reality of life. It's not easy to do, but it's still very important. It's also important to understand that your needs will change over the de-estrangement continuum, and that's informed by, I suppose, how long the estrangement has lasted, the dynamics of the family, the type of support that you have in your life now. And I know for me personally, because I don't talk about it much, but I am estranged from some people in my life. And at the early stages, I needed to talk about it a lot. And specifically with people who had personal history with the relationship, they understood the relationship, the dynamics, so they were able to validate my experiences because they knew what I was going through. But as I progressed and as I moved on, I'd done personal therapy and I'd done a huge amount of personal work. My needs changed, and now I don't talk about it very much. I don't need that validation. I have no desire to talk about it at all. The only time it comes up is when I share some information with my clients, just to give them context, because I know that they would benefit from me talking about it. It's of no benefit to me anymore, but it is a benefit to them to hear it, in the same way I'm doing it now. What I need now is fun. What I need now is just a sense of just being around people, being myself, cracking jokes, healthy distractions. And this is the normal stuff, really, but that gets lost because we're so overtaken by the crisis of family, the crisis of estrangement. So understand that your needs will change over the course of your life, and especially over the continuum of your estrangement. I don't know where you are in your estrangement. You could be still talking to each other, and maybe there's no physical space yet. Maybe there's a problem there that it's gone unspoken, you haven't dealt with it yet. Or maybe the other extreme where there's no contact at all. You're in a different area, and it's by design. That will change what you need. So just reflect on that and be conscious that your needs will change. Okay, so now we're going to talk about actual engagement with family over Christmas. So you have made the decision to go and visit. The first thing I always look at with my clients is stage management, and this is basically controlling the environment as best as possible. So that could mean decide if you're going to visit. You set the agenda. You decide how long you're going to stay. You're going to decide what will be discussed within the family. If you can, you decide the location. If the meetup, if it was somewhere external to the family home, it makes it a little bit easier. Having other people around, you can diffuse some of the stress. That's not always possible. Maybe it's home or nowhere, and that's fine. Another part of it is, so you decide to visit. You need to be careful of conversational ambushes, and that means that you may get lured into a certain conversation about a certain topic which you're not comfortable with. It could be around conflict in the past. It could be about mistakes that were made in the past. Whatever it is that's toxic to you, and it's quite subtle. It could be a quite normal conversation about the weather or about anything that's gone on in someone's life that seems quite inconsequential, and then very carefully it kind of maneuvers into this complex conversation about history, around past, about stuff that's gone on in the past. You need to be very, very careful with this, because you could be drawn into the toxicity of that situation very, very quickly, or you may end up divulging information that you didn't really want to divulge. You didn't want to share with anybody, and you may not do it completely unbeknownst of yourself, and you may regret it later on. And don't beat yourself up if you do that, but just be aware of it. Now, the next thing, which I find is particularly important, once you've re-engaged, you're in family, or you're sitting in the home environment, you're sitting with whoever's there, I always encourage my clients to really closely observe all the individual dynamics that are happening within the family. Because as a collective, it's very difficult to deal with a group of people, and that's true if you're giving a talk or you're in a room. It's going to be quite stressful because it seems like there's them and then there's you. But if you can focus on individual characteristics of people, whether it's role adoption. So if you find that you notice that someone starts to take on a certain role, maybe someone is a peacekeeper, maybe someone is a professional victim, maybe somebody is a comedian that constantly, maybe they're cracking jokes as a way of diffusing the situation, maybe somebody is a puppet master. You observe someone, you can see subtle kind of manipulations happening through language and through actions. Just through observing that can be quite empowering as well, because it can keep you out of the situation. Another thing to watch out for is triangulation, and that could mean that, let's say, two people you're estranged from one sibling or two. Notice that triad where they redirect their stresses onto you because you're perceived as a vulnerable person. And triangulation can happen within multiple groups all the time, where people work together kind of collectively against one individual who they perceive to be weak or not able to stand up for themselves. Again, really observe those type of complex dynamics that happen within families. Another thing to notice within ourselves is regressive behaviours. So maybe you find that it's almost you become a child again. Certain feelings start to come up, and those feelings start to drive certain behaviours. All of a sudden, you become excessively agreeable, even though you don't want to, or maybe you become excessively disagreeable when you don't want to. And I see this. Another role that I see from time to time is that of the rebel. And the rebel is always disagreeing with any authoritative figure. They just don't like authority, and there's a reason for that. They may be treated quite badly with anybody in an authoritarian position in their growing up or at any stage in their life, so they rebel against it now. Another thing that can be helpful if you do decide to go and visit family. So you've observed everything, maybe it's quite stressful. It's useful to keep your head out of the game as well. And one thing I always encourage my clients to do is try and have plans for after they visit. It's something that they would look forward to do. Maybe it's going to the cinema, maybe it is having a drink with friends, maybe it's just going for a coffee and meeting up with people. But that's where your head should be. When you go and visit anybody, you should spend the time and be present, but also you're looking forward to other aspects of your life. And again, part of this is to make sure your family doesn't consume your life completely. So keep your head out of the game and have something to look forward to always. It shouldn't always be about family. Another part of it is choosing an effective buffer, and a buffer is generally, it could be anything that protects you from family. It could be your partner, and it could be your kids. I see that a lot. Sometimes people bring their kids along and they know that I'll stay for an hour and I have an excuse to leave. You choose what's appropriate for you. But if the buffer is an adult, it's important that you let the buffer know again what you need from them. And sometimes with my clients, they bring their husband or their wife and to the family event, and there is toxic behaviours going on. The partner gets really angry with what's happening, with the unfairness of the situation, and that's no help to anybody. You're only stressing out the estranged person even more. What they need is a stoicism. They need a calm. They need an objectivity, if it's possible. They don't need you getting stressed out or getting angry over a situation because you have no help to anybody. You need help. Your role is to essentially diffuse stress, not cause more to it. And then have an exit strategy. Have an excuse. I have to go. Oh, it's at the time. Jesus, I have to pick up the kids. I have to collect this. I need to drop the kids off to a party. Whatever it is, have an excuse. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to over-explain your excuse any longer. Just say, I have an excuse. I have to go. And again, this is a part of autonomy. People who are heavily enmeshed or entangled, they're always excusing themselves, excusing their behaviours. As an adult, you make your excuses quickly. You say you have to shoot, and then you go. Don't over-explain it to anybody. Okay guys, so we're now with the aftermath. You've visited Christmas, or maybe you haven't visited Christmas and you're left feeling a certain way. And if, let's say you did go visit, again, often my clients, they feel worse because they've gone back to the family home and all these nostalgic memories start to flood in. Good times, bad times, and it can leave people feeling very raw or very grief-stricken because the loss really starts to hit them. It also can re-traumatize people as well. Going back to that home where maybe some very bad stuff happened, it can bring up huge, profound effects of trauma, and you have to be very, very careful with that. It's also important at this stage to kind of reflect on what happened. Often nothing has happened, it's fine, but you're still left feeling a certain way. But I always encourage my clients to really just reflect on how did you feel in the room with those people in that moment. And the goal is to try and create a separation between how we feel now, between how we may have felt in the past, because as adults we are more empowered than we realise, and it's important to really separate the then and the now. How I felt in the past, and maybe you felt disempowered, maybe you felt weak. Now you may actually feel stronger than you realise around these people, but you have to reflect on that and own that strength that's inside of you. Now, it's not true of everybody. Some people are still incredibly hurt, which is very understandable. They ruminate a lot on what had been said within the family home. Certain remarks play in their mind, and there's a huge amount of passive-aggressive communication that happens within families. It isn't always direct conflict. So what did that mean? What did they say there? I wonder what they meant with that. That happens a lot, and that to me is a byproduct of enmeshment. When they're still heavily fused with the family, autonomy steps back. An autonomous person decides, I don't care what they think. I'm not interested in what that meant. Let them communicate whatever they want. This is my life. I'm going to live it. And this is now, the stress of Christmas hopefully is over, and this is the time to really work on autonomy. And a part of autonomy again is engaging with support. So, talk to your friends, talk to the people in your life who understand your situation, and use that space to process what you've been through, what the visit was like. Therapy can be very effective here as well. You know, sometimes my clients come back in after Christmas and say, well, how do you feel? How did it go? What are you going to work on in the new year? And autonomy is a constant process, and it's cyclical. We regress sometimes. We go move forward, we move back. It isn't always a straight line, and we have to understand that. Often we kind of get very upset that we've made so much progress, and then we may visit family and we feel like we've taken 10 steps back, but that's the reality of change. And it's using all these challenges as a stepping stone for some measure of growth, and to constantly learn and just make decisions that are best for you. And you know, the goal again is very much to learn to self-care, look after yourselves, make decisions that are best for you and the people who are in your life who are affected by estrangement, but who would benefit from the distance, because that distance is often very necessary. It's not comfortable, it's not nice, it's not, in an ideal world it wouldn't happen, but it's the reality of what's happening within some families, that distance. And if that distance may help you to be more true to yourself, be more relaxed, be a better version of you, and the people in your life, your kids, your partner, your friends, they may benefit from that. It may be in everyone's interest to choose estrangement. I'm not saying this is true of everybody, but just something to reflect on. Alright guys, I hope this video was helpful. Quickly, I just want to end on this. Your family do not own you. Okay, they don't own your life. Now, they can have a profoundly negative effect on you and your life, but that doesn't mean that your life has to be defined by that effect or by those people. It should be defined by you, your choices, and the people who you choose to spend your life around. I also want you to remember that if you are someone who is dealing with family and maybe there's estrangement there, don't feel like you're on your own, because this is a huge problem. And just from a statistical perspective, there's a bit of research in the UK from an organisation called Stand Alone, and they commissioned a research around family estrangement, and they discovered that 1 in 5 families in the UK are affected by it in some capacity. That's 20% of the population in the UK alone. That's a huge number. So this is a huge problem. It goes unspoken because of the stigma, but please don't believe that you're on your own. There's other people who are experiencing this, and the support is there. Talk to people. People may understand. If they don't understand, it's very much a reflection of them more than you, so you just move on to the next person. If anyone wants to talk to me, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email. I'll put the email address at the end, just on the screen. I have a website, toxicescape.com. I have articles, I have blogs and vlogs around family and other aspects of life. Please check it out. There's some free training there as well, some videos on self-esteem, there's videos on dysfunctional families, some other tools you might use that might help. I hope you guys are doing okay. I hope Christmas works out. I hope you're not too stressed over the next few weeks. I hope you get through Christmas, and I hope you can get to tackle the new year and really focus on you, on your goals, and again, not let Christmas and let your family define your life. Thanks a million for watching. Take care and mind yourselves. Good luck.